Good evening. It is now 6:30, and I will call to order this regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment for the City of Keene. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and the city website. The video is also posted on the city website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the agenda and supporting materials will find it on the city website. To receive electronic copies of future agenda packets, please go to the homepage and subscribe to the city meetings email list. The public and other board members will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. Anyone who wishes to address the board is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room, identify themselves by name, and address prior to speaking. As a reminder, our minute taker is participating remotely this evening. Board members, please be sure to turn on your microphone when speaking. If the minute taker is unable to hear, they will ask that you speak louder or turn your microphone on. With that being said, my name is Joe Hoppick. I'm the chair, and to my left,
Jane Taylor.
Richard Clough.
Michael Welsh.
as I think all of you know, we have a four-member board tonight, and I know 3 of the 4 cases on the agenda have agreed to go forward with the 4-member board, so we'll pick that up as we go. I just wanted to put that out there. So we'll take up the minutes of the previous meeting of September 5th, 2023. Anybody have any questions or comments? Attorney Taylor.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we approve the meeting minutes from September 5th as presented.
Okay, Mike, thank you. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. All in favor? Unanimous? Approved. All right, we'll go right to, I don't think there's any unfinished business, right? I don't think there is. So the first item on the agenda is Z.B.A. 2324. Let me just get to my page. And I will read the heading. The petitioners, Grady Budd and Lauren Lavoie, represented by A. Eli Lino, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, of Bernstein Shore of Manchester, request a variance for property located at 143 Jordan Road, tax map 232-008-000, which is in the rural district. The petitioner requests to permit the construction of an energy vestibule entrance 41 feet 5 inches into the front setback, where 50 feet is required per Article 3.1.2 of the zoning regulations. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is located in the rural zone. The address 143 Jordan Road was built in 1976. It's on 1.5 acres. Single-family home. There are no variances on record or any Z.B.A. on record for this property.
Okay. Attorney Lino, do you want to proceed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And if I'm pronouncing that wrong, please correct me.
I always will. Eli Lano.
Lano, thank you.
So Bernstein Shore in Manchester. I'm joined tonight by the property owners, Grady Budd and Lauren Lavoie, as well as by the project architect, Katie Sutherland. So if we have questions on the plan, or we've printed out the elevations on large sheets, et cetera, but I know you're a pretty tech-savvy board, and I believe you have those. As noted by Mr. Hagan, there is no existing variances on this property. In part, this was built before the zoning change to the 50-foot setback in the larger lots. It's a pre-existing condition as such. I was talking to the architect about this and asked what the style of the house was, because it's listed in the assessor's sheets as a colonial, and I said, I don't think that's right, but that's not my expertise. And she responded, it's a garrison sort of, but it's really a hodgepodge. So the point of why we're in front of you is because this is already pre-existing in that 50-foot setback. We're trying to rebuild the front facade of this house along with basically an airlock or an energy vestibule. Winter's certainly coming, starting to feel like that. This will be a way to not let all the hot air out and cool air in the summer by having that sort of double door airlock. It's a logical build, and it will, as you've seen from the elevation plan that's been submitted with you, it's going to be a nicer look, really in keeping with what Jordan Road is starting to become. There's been a lot of redevelopment up there. There's some big houses. There's some beautiful houses up there trying to take advantage of that view. It's in the rural zone, which is in the ordinance outside of the valley floor. This certainly is that. And as such, the lot slopes very sharply from Jordan Road down into Keene. So there's not much room to move back without undertaking a whole bunch of cuts and fills to try to do this in a way that complies with this front ordinance. Setback ordinance would be very, very challenging. So with that, I think it behooves me to stop the preamble and get into the 5 criteria for you. The variance would not be contrary to the public interest. To be contrary to the public interest, it needs to conflict with the essential character of the neighborhood or threaten the public health, safety, or welfare. As noted, there's not necessarily one overwhelming character visually to this neighborhood other than it is residential. It's in a low-density residential zone. We're maintaining exactly the same single-family house up there. No contradiction with the essential character doing that. And then to threaten the health, safety, or welfare, we're really not changing anything from the way this is used from the 1976 original build. It will just be a better looking version. It's not going to hurt sight lines. It's not going to make it less able to be emergency response time diminished, anything like that. So certainly feel it meets the first criteria, but would obviously be happy to answer any questions the board may have on those. The second criteria, the spirit of the ordinance, is related to the first criteria. Again, this meets the spirit of the ordinance where this zone is proposed for very low density development of residential character, single family house, mildly encroaching slightly more into the setback, which it already encroaches in, but nothing that violates the spirit of the ordinance. Substantial justice has been held by our Supreme Court to be a balancing test between the rights of the applicant and the rights of the public, so any harm to the public can't be outweighed by the benefit to the applicant. This is an opportunity for these homeowners to really make this their home as opposed to a slightly tired, slightly dated 1976 facade, but on a home that works well. Obviously, moving right now is difficult, rates being what they are, the housing stock being what it is. This is an opportunity to really spruce up this house with a beautiful new facade and the energy vestibule entrance, so it's a big benefit to my clients. And on the other side of it, their neighbors to the left and right and across the street are also going to get to look at a better looking facade rather than this hodgepodge that currently exists. So I don't see a detriment to the public. So the balancing test tips on the side of the applicant. Again, speaking to the values of surrounding properties, they'll not be diminished by this. This is an investment by these homeowners into this house, trying to take something that's a little tired and sort of architecturally not what they're hoping for, and having the opportunity to reinvest in this piece of the neighborhood, which has happened up and down Jordan Road. It will be a good positive for the neighbors. It shows a favorable comp. It shows that if people take the investment on any of these other houses, it's in keeping with the neighborhood. This is what people are doing. They're working hard to be proud of the houses on Jordan Road, which is understandable. And then for the fifth criteria, special conditions of the property which distinguish it from other properties in the area. Again, this is a pre-existing condition where it was built, so that can be looked upon by this board as a unique characteristic, as well as the fact that it slopes sharply from Jordan Road into the valley. So building further back, to do so to make this compliant, you'd have to demolish the house and move it back, which is an excessive expectation and creates a hardship to do so, both financially and it's just unnecessary, energy-wise, et cetera. Whereas allowing this where you already have a flatter area on the front, you already know that the driveway works, et cetera. It's a logical way to improve this house, make it more suitable for their use based on the conditions of the property. And the proposed use is reasonable. As noted, this is a zone for single-family residential predominantly, as well as some agriculture uses. This is a single-family residential proposal, which is what is there currently, so it is a reasonable use. One other thing is that we have a letter signed by the neighbors at the different houses. I know we're not open to public comment yet, but I can either read these if the board prefers or submit to Corinne to have.
Is there a preference? I mean, we don't have copies of those, I don't believe, do we?
I just received them from my clients tonight. They were delivered today.
Then I would ask you to read them,
Yes, sir.
because we don't have them in the packet, and they're not in the record otherwise, so.
Understood. So, we have from Carol Arsenault at 142 Jordan Road, from Clark and Joanne Dexter at 137 Jordan Road, and from Christopher and Megan Dubrisky at 153 Jordan Road. And that, so it's the same letter from each of the different abutters, left, right, and across the street. Dear Keene Zoning Board, it is our understanding that Lauren Lavoie and Grady Budd, who reside at 143 Jordan Road, have applied to Keene Zoning Board for a property variance so that an addition to the front of their home can encroach on the 50-foot setback. As their immediate neighbors, we fully support their request and are not opposed to this encroachment. Thank you. And again, it was the multiple signatures on the same.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything more to add?
I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
That's where I'm going next. Any questions, anybody? Attorney Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know whether this is a question for you or for the architect, who I understand is here, but in trying to understand the drawings that were submitted with the application, is the existing house within the 50-foot setback?
No, it isn't. So the existing corner of the garage is already in the setback.
Okay. But the main house itself is currently within the 50-foot, I need better glasses, within the 50-foot setback then?
So the zone line cuts a piece of the garage right basically to the front door. So there is encroaching pieces of the house.
Okay.
And again, attached garage here. So the building is currently non-conforming.
All right, thank you.
If you're looking at, I'm not sure which plan, I can't really see that plan, but the plan I'm looking at is, I'm not sure if it's identifiable. It's page 33 of 88 in our packet, if that helps. But it shows the setback line bisecting the corner of the house, and it looks like it's going through a shaded area, which would be the new vestibule, right?
Ms.
it's-
Sutherland might,
Katie Sutherland, architect.
Thank you.
If this is the plan that you're looking at, Mr. Chairman, the hatched areas represent the proposed addition,
Okay,
and then the setback line is indicated here. So you can see that some of the existing building is within the setback line, even a portion of the entry. And the hatched area is either building or roof overhang that would
gotcha.
be
That's the one
beyond.
I'm looking at, yes.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it non-conforming?
correct.
Okay, that's good to understand.
Right, so it was designed obviously to a different setback standard when it was built.
And on that same map, just, you know, following up on the fifth criterion, the slopes look like they slope, if you're looking at the front of the house, they sort of slope front to back on the left side.
The
Is that your
slopes-
steep slope?
Do we have
so-
topo?
Yeah,
okay.
so you can see these contour lines here.
Right.
So the hill drops off pretty steeply at the back of the house.
That's
Each
what the
of
contour
these-
lines would indicate, yep?
Yeah,
Okay,
all along that side of Jordan Road, actually.
all right.
You'll notice on the plan, if I may add, that because I think of that topography on that side of Jordan Road, many of these other houses are also, you know, within the 50-foot setback. So there's definitely precedent on that side of the road.
Are all those houses on the other side of the road pre-existing? In other words, were they zoned out of that setback after the fact?
I think having driven this a few times now, generally, I don't think any of these look to be brand new or certainly
Okay.
last 10, 15 years.
And was the 50-foot setback put in at the last round of code modifications?
I don't
Do you remember?
know. And
Maybe Mike knows.
Could you repeat that, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, when was the 50-foot setback imposed in that zone?
The 50-foot setback has been, since I've been here for the last 23 years in the rural zone. The thing that changed in the rural zone this last go-around was going from 5 acres down to 2 acres in the rural zone.
Oh, okay, that's, all right. All right. And this is wait a minute, I wrote it down. This is 1.5 acres, right?
That is correct.
All right.
It's a legally non-conforming lot, similar to the one surrounding it.
Yep, okay. Any other questions? Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, just for clarification, I assume that this new vestibule is going to have some form of roof overhang. So I guess my question is whether that is factored into the calculation that was in the application?
Yes.
yes, that was. So we measured from the farthest overhang.
Okay,
So we gave you the most encroaching number.
thank you.
All set? Do the members have any other questions? All set, okay, good. I'm going to turn it over to anybody opposed to this application who was here tonight that wishes to speak. Seeing no opposition, we'll go to anybody who wants to support it. And you've read the letter before, so we won't make you do that again. Okay, nobody here to do that. Nobody has any other questions, no other comments? I'll close the public hearing, we can deliberate. Public hearing is closed. Anybody want to go first? Mike?
Well, to me, this is one of those situations where the applicant, through the narrative of the form they filled out, has done a really good job covering the bases. And-
Yep.
And base number one, contrary to the public interest, I think this citation of case law and things like that is interesting and compelling to me.
Anytime you cite case law, it's compelling and exciting.
I know how many lawyers are on this board.
It's horrible, isn't it? I agree. Mr. Clough? Okay. I don't see any issue. I mean, it's not going to alter the character of the neighborhood. It's not going to create any public danger of any kind or safety issue. It's going to look nice. It's going to fit in. I agree with the remarks before about it. An energy vestibule in a low-density district, in a low-density area with a single-family residence in the rural district is within the spirit of the ordinance. And on the third criterion, I see absolutely no public harm to this. If anything, there's a public benefit in terms of energy saving. And I appreciate the gain to the property owner. I don't see any way this could diminish property values anywhere. And on the last criterion, I would say that the topography is a factor, and the fact that it's a pre-existing condition in terms of the location of I guess the footprint of the house gives it a little bit of a problem as well. It makes it harder to comply with the setback, so I think that criterion is met as well. So those are my 2 cents on this application. I'm going to vote to approve it. Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, I'd like to echo your comments, and I think that one of the things here that you have to consider is whether it's going to change the density, because that's the whole purpose behind a low-density zone, and it's clearly not going to impact that. I think the topography is, to my way of thinking, the primary factor of the hardship. And as long as the calculations are correct, I would also say that on the 5th criteria, that it's also quite reasonable request.
Any other comments? Does anybody want to make a motion? Well, we'll deal with the, let's have a main motion, and then we'll deal with the criteria separately. How about that? Oh,
I'll move. Move to approve ZBA 2324 for 143 Jordan Road.
okay.
I'll second.
Seconded, moved and seconded. Okay, the first question then is, will granting the variance be contrary to the public interest?
Mr.
Let me
Chair,
rephrase that again. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest? Question mark. All those in favor? All in favor. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All those in favor? Unanimous. Granting the invariance would do substantial justice. All those in favor? Unanimous. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. All those in favor? Unanimous. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in an unnecessary hardship because there would be no fair and substantial relationship existing between the general public purposes of the ordinance and the specific application of that provision to this property. All those in favor? Unanimous. Now, back to the main motion. Do we approve? Oh, yeah, let's do that. One more question. The proposed use is a reasonable one. That's unanimous. On the main motion regarding ZBA 2324, the motion was to approve it. All those in favor? It's unanimous, approved.
Thank you all. Have a great week.
You too. Now, on the next application, if I can get to it.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, the second was made by Richard Cleff.
Yes,
If you guys could just make sure to state your name for the record taker, for the minute taker.
we'll clear that up. Now, this one is application 2325, and we have an email from the attorney representing the applicant, a gentleman named Jeffrey Christensen from Cleveland Waters and Baths in Manchester, I believe, or no, Concord. Mr. Christensen wrote an email to Corinne today at, or actually Tuesday, October 31st, asking that this matter be continued until the December meeting. So I'll take this email as a motion since they're not here, and would ask someone to, or a request for a motion, and ask someone to move the continuance of 2325 to our next meeting. Mr. Clough.
I'll make a motion to move ZBA 23-25, 706 Main Street to our December meeting,
At the request of the
at the
applicant?
request of the applicant.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, can you state the date of that meeting?
It looks like it's December 4th,
Correct.
2023.
Thank you.
Is there a second? Mike Welch.
Mike
seconds
Welch,
that.
will second.
Motion being made and seconded. All those in favor? It's unanimous. So we'll continue 2325 to December 4th. And, Rich, could you pass this down to Corinne? So I
Yes,
don't
absolutely.
Walk out of here with it? She'll yell at me. All right. Next application is 2326, and this is property on 36 Carpenter Street, not 63. So I'll read the introduction. Petitioner to Sulis Realty, DBA MGJ Realty of Keene, requests a variance for property located at 36 Carpenter Street, tax map 573-067-000, which is in the medium-density district. The petitioner requests a change of use from a warehouse to a health center/gym, where a gym is not a permitted use per Article 3.5.5 of the zoning regulations. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 36 Carpenter Street, zone medium density, built 1930. It's currently 23,247 square feet. Current uses, or current and past uses, were a school, manufacturing, office, factory, storage, retail, wholesale. There was a Z.B.A. application in 87. It was a two-part Z.B.A. application. It was an appeal administrative decision as well as an expansion of a non-conforming use, or an enlargement of a non-conforming use. The first part of the petition was denied based on the zoning. They agreed with the zoning administrator's decision for the use, and then it was approved for the enlargement of non-conforming use to expand retail service use of the printing for an occupancy of 2,200 to 6,900 square feet.
So what's the current square footage of the building now?
Currently, the total square footage is 23,247 square feet.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Mike? Attorney Taylor?
Could you just confirm the zoning?
The zoning is medium density. If you'd like me to read the intent of the medium density district, I do have that available. Sure. The intent of the medium density district to provide medium intensity residential development and associated uses. All uses in this district shall have city water and sewer services. Would you like me to read off the permitted uses as well?
I guess my, feel free. But my question is, for all the uses that are in this building, is it correct to assume that the zoning has changed over time?
I could not confirm that. I know that this building, for the last, I can only speak for the time that I've been here, has always been zoned medium density. The uses, there's been multiple uses in that building over the years. A lot of them just changing from the same to different owner, doing the same type of business in those locations.
Thank you. And maybe the applicant can clarify that for us.
Any other questions for staff? Who do we have tonight to present the application?
Hi, everyone. My name is John Tasoulas, Tasoulas. I reside 36 South Lincoln Street here in Keene. And like Mike said, it's a commercial building in the medium density zone. To the south is what we call industrial historical, center of Keene, the railroad area. There are a lot of commercial buildings in that area. At the corner of Water and Carpenter Street, the Findings building was there. Across the street to the west is a park, which is also zone medium density. So we're really on the fringe of the medium density zone. To the south is more industrial. To the west is also commercial, industrial. And so we're located around the fringe. As Mike said, the building was built in the 30s and added on to over the years. At what point the medium density was applied to it, I do not know. I'm assuming somewhere like in the 70s, but I'm not 100% sure. The medium density zone allows for virtually no commercial uses except for telecommunications tower and maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, what was the other, was a home for people who were abused, a house?
Mr. Chair, if I
Yeah,
may.
go ahead, yep.
The congregate living and social services with a CUP is an allowable use, domestic violence shelter,
Domestic violence.
group home, small. There's different categories of the group home, community garden, and conservation area and telecommunications facility.
Yeah. So all the uses that are currently in the building are not permitted under medium density, which is kind of interesting why that zoning was imposed on this property to begin with, considering its history and uses, but that's where we are today. And as we've stated, we want to change some of the uses from warehouse to a gym, recreational use. And so that's where we're at. I don't know what else I can say about the building to start. Do you have, did that answer your questions, or that muddy the waters? The only uses there are, so at that building are, residential is really what the zoning is asking for. It's a
Why don't you tell us what
1.2 acre site.
Why don't you tell us what uses are going on there now?
Yeah, there's warehousing, office space, there's a printing business, there's a carpet care business, there's a dog washing business. And so really the permitted uses that there are there that the zoning requires is the most you could do there is a 3-unit building. If I were to tear it down, I could get a 3-unit building on a 1.2 acre lot. And so that would be sort of, to be in compliance with the zoning. But I'll start going through the criteria if you like, or do you have
Yes,
any other
please,
questions?
certainly, yep, no, go right ahead.
Okay. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. The public interest would be served because we have an industrial building, like I said, that's in a medium-density zone that does not have any permitted uses under the current zoning. It would allow us, the building owner, to increase the number of uses in the property and make it more viable as a rental, which is better for Keene. And on the flip side of that, too, it would be that, having recreational uses in the medium-density zone, I think, is good for the zone. It allows people to get together and work out, congregate, and have a community of people who are like-minded and health conscious. And seeing that there's a park right across the street, which is also in the medium-density zone, which is not permitted, but we all know it's owned by the city, and they can do, they don't have to abide by by zoning regulations, but I don't think that they would put a use on that property unless they thought it wouldn't be contrary to the zone. They would want something that would fit in, that would be useful. So if the city thinks that it would be good to have a park and recreational use across the street, I'm thinking that it would be good to have it at 36 Carpenter Street. Would also be, would fit in with the neighborhood and would be not contrary to the public interest. Number 2, if the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. And I have really the same response, is that, people getting together for health purposes is good for the medium-density zone. It gets people together in that area to work out and to congregate and to improve their lives. The ordinance, I think, would want, recreational uses, and this is a closed recreational, it's for membership only, it's not open to the public. So we're talking small amounts of people getting together, and trying to improve their health at this location, in this zone, I think would be in the spirit of the ordinance. 3, granting the variance would do substantial justice. I think it would do justice, again, because I have a building where every use in it is legally non-conforming. And that the zoning imposed on this property is very restrictive. And this would create justice in that I would be able to use this property with a reasonable use, to add a reasonable use to this property that would not be, injurious to the neighborhood, to the medium-density zone. Number 4. And number 4, there's a letter written by Paul Rodenhauser, a Realtor at Masiello, talking about giving his an opinion about the property values in that neighborhood, and that he is saying that, in his professional opinion, that the use of recreational gym, healthcare, will not decrease or diminish the property value whatsoever in that area. And number 5, the unnecessary hardship, and I've sort of gotten to that a little bit, with the fact that we have a commercial building that was built in the 30s and added on to over the years, and a zoning district that is very restrictive was applied to it, in that none of the uses that were in that building over the years are permitted anymore. They're all legally non-conforming, if that's even a term anymore. Is that still a term, right? Legally non-conforming? And so my hardship is that, I need to have a use for this property. The industrial uses in Keene are diminishing. Factories and commercial, industrial spaces are shrinking. And other uses that are beneficial to the district need to be implemented in these buildings. You can see that on a building on Victoria Street. There used to be a warehouse building there, and that's very close by to my building, and that's now a gym. You're going to see that the Findings building, which is virtually adjacent to mine, is going to be changed into a skate park. So you have commercial buildings, industrial buildings in that area changing from those uses to recreational uses. And so, having a building that has no legal uses under the current ordinance is kind of unfair. And it would be very fair if this board were to allow a reasonable use like a gym to be permitted in the building.
Anybody have any questions? Attorney Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You say it's membership only. About how many people do you have at once, so to speak?
Yeah, about 15 or so, I'm told by Michelle, who owns the CrossFit gym. 15 to 20, say.
Okay, so also,
Yeah, go ahead.
also I was wondering about parking, because if you have several uses there from
Yep.
the other businesses, I don't have a clue how the parking is calculated.
Yep.
Maybe Mr.
I've
Bacon-
provided that documentation to city staff prior to this meeting, where I measured up the building of usable space and came up with a parking plan. Do you have that in front of you?
Is this your email of Friday, October 20th? Where you have office, 4,000 square feet, 16 parking spaces. I should put my glasses on to read this. 16 parking spaces for office, 2.5 for warehouse, and 24 for gym? Does that sound right?
Yep, yes.
That's all I saw in here.
And there's a plan that I submitted too.
Oh, yeah, you might have a plan.
It's.
Yeah.
Do you see the screen, Chair? You guys see it? All right.
There is a plan.
can continue. So I guess the other question I have is, am I correct in understanding that this gym is currently operating?
It is currently operating, and in some space, then they'd also like to open up, in another section of the building, a climbing gym.
Will that change the parking requirements?
Nope, I've included that as part of
Okay.
this application.
All right, when did the gym start operating?
About 3 years ago.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, one final question. When you leased the space to the gym, were you aware of the zoning issues?
When we bought the property, there was a school in the building, and I just thought that perhaps that would be a use that was consistent with a school.
But you didn't make inquiry?
I did not make any inquiries.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
Just a quick
Mike,
one.
go ahead, yep.
More clarity on that last issue. So the prior use of the particular space that we're talking about here is, even though the gym's been there for a bit, is not warehouse but school? The prior use for this
Yep.
particular part of the building?
Where the gym is currently now was part warehouse and then part school. So she occupies space that was part the school, and then there was a part that was just a warehouse space. So she took both spaces, and I made a bad assumption, and that's why we're here tonight, to try to rectify that and to be in compliance with the zoning laws here.
So in your I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Let me just find the pages here. Your application on the fifth criterion talks about unnecessary hardship, talks about the property being in a flood zone. Does that really have anything to do with the use that you're proposing?
I think mostly it talks about, the building, having this zoning applied to it, the medium density zone, a commercial building, and also being in the floodplain. It really describes its uniqueness, and that it's, hard to rent because of those two items.
What
But
I'm-
the floodplain would have really nothing to do with the gym's operation or.
Well, that's sort of what I was getting at. See, to satisfy unnecessary hardship, you have to show that the zoning provision in play, which is the prohibition of a gym, creates an unnecessary hardship when you look at a feature of the property.
Yep, but it has prohibition of any use that's in the building. That's my hardship. There's no uses that are described in the zoning table that I could have in this building. I don't really have alternatives rather than reasonable uses for the property. And I think that having a gym is a reasonable use. Without having reasonable uses, I would say that you could consider it a taking. I wouldn't have any viable way to make income to make the building, viable economically. It's unfair to have a building where no uses are permitted.
Well, there are permitted uses in the medium density zone.
And I described them, I went through them, and one of them was a 3-unit building. So that would require me to tear it down and put up a 3-unit building. That's all that's permitted in the medium-density zone on a lot. For residential, I guess I could put a telecommunications tower, I could put a domestic violence shelter.
What's the size of the lot? Do you know that?
1.2 acres.
Okay. And aside from the gym, you have 5 other uses going on in there? Warehousing, offices, printing, a carpet store, and a dog washing business?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you have anything more you want to tell us?
I can't think of anything right now.
All right, well, we'll open it up to public comment at this point. Is there any member of the public here tonight who opposes this application? If there are, have a seat at the table and tell us your name and what you want to say.
My name's Theodore Shabbat. I live at 245 Church Street. I also own a building, a garage at 17 Kirk Court, which is 60 feet from the building that we're discussing.
Okay,
I've lived in the area all my life. I was brought up in that area. That building that we're discussing has always been a commercial building. From when I remembered, it used to be MPB started that. It went to Morgan Linen Company. J.A. Jubb Insulating Company has been in there. St. Martin Cabinetry Company. It's always been a commercial building. So I don't understand why he can't keep it a commercial building and rent it as a commercial building. I know the city has changed changed it to medium density, but I feel he should have a variance because it's always been a commercial building, and I don't feel that it could be used for any other thing than a commercial building.
okay.
That's all I have to say.
All right, well,
Thank you.
thank you for your comments. Anybody else would like to speak in opposition?
May I add that I don't think Ted was speaking in opposition.
No, I wasn't.
I think you misheard.
Oh, okay, well,
Sorry.
Fair
to
enough.
interrupt.
so I'll try to be more clear for the next one. Anybody who wants to speak in support of the application would be your time.
I was. I misunderstood. I'm sorry.
That's
I
okay.
was speaking in support of
Okay,
this application.
so would you agree that the use of a gym would be more commercial than anything else?
It's a business,
Okay, yep.
okay? I think it'd be good for the neighborhood. He does have ample parking there. I guess that's all I gotta say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tsoulis, based on what you heard, do you want to comment on, I'm sorry, there's somebody else.
Yeah, I'm here in support.
Okay.
My name is Michael Conway.
How do you do?
I live in Keene on Railroad Street. And there are current businesses there. And if the variance isn't granted, I think you're putting those businesses potentially in jeopardy. they may have to move or relocate or go out of business. And in this current climate, I think that's the last thing we want to do. So I think that, as well as everything else that you folks are tasked with having to consider, I think you should add that to the list. There's a number of ongoing, viable business, successful, operating, functioning businesses there that are working and generating income for people and paying taxes, and I don't think we want to jeopardize any of that, especially in a time like this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak in support?
Hi,
Hi.
my name's Asia, and this is Zuri. And my wife and I, we live on Kingsbury Street, which is like literally right around the corner from this gym. And we are, including this one, in support of this variance. It's a great addition to the neighborhood. We know the gym owner, and I know that this is gonna be something that's viable for the neighborhood. My wife Molly and I, we're working on kind of, we're part of, started, whatever, the neighborhood committee to revitalize East Keene. And, you know, with the ongoing issues that East Keene is facing with the crime and homelessness and drug issues, I think one of the things that we're really passionate about is making sure that there are good influences in the neighborhood and things that we want to cultivate, we want to encourage. And I've spoken to many neighbors in our area who are also in support of this, and we think that it would be a great addition to the neighborhood and bring some vitality back to the area.
Yes, Attorney Taylor.
Yeah, could you just repeat your name, please, for the record?
Asia Davis.
Thank you.
Are there any further comments in support of the application? Come on up and have a seat. State your name.
Hi there. My name is Molly Pinney. I also live at Kingsbury Street with Asia and Zuri. And just again, speaking out in support of this as someone who grew up in this area and drove hours to find rock climbing, I think it's really exciting to have it here in Keene locally. And as Asia said, I think with a lot that we have and we're addressing in our neighborhood right now, to be able to bring you know, this type of business and more kind of, I don't know, good things to the area would be really great. So we're fully in support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in support? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Michelle Gaffney, and I am the owner of CrossFit Monadnock, and hoping to be the owner of Climb Monadnock Gym. I'm obviously in support of this. I feel that it is a good contribution to not only just the community, but the neighborhood. I don't know, I think that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak in support of this? Thank you.
I'm Ryan McGuire, and I'm also the co-owner of Monadnock Climbing Gym. I'm obviously in support of it. I think it's going to be a welcome addition to the community to have something that right now currently residents have to drive over an hour to get to the closest climbing gym. In addition to being able to provide some jobs for members of the community in the future, and again, bringing a healthy resource to the local community. Again, you know, the East Keene area obviously has its issues that I'm aware of, and you know, I think as a community we can bring a lot of good and awareness and everything to try to keep that area clean, and so I'm fully supportive of it.
All right, very good. Anybody else want to speak in support? All right. Does the applicant want to, you have a right to, comment on pros or cons. You got mostly pros, so I don't know if you want to add anything more.
I just want to reiterate what everyone else has said about how this is a benefit to the neighborhood. It is a very reasonable use for this property, considering that industrial uses are shrinking in the area, and the fact that, again, we have no other legal uses that we can have at this property. Everything that there is legally non-conforming, and that to have a use like this that brings the community together, that's in the public interest, that's provides justice to me and the community, I think moving forward it will be great for Keene.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
There being no other comments from the public, I'm going to close the public hearing and we'll discuss the application. Anybody have any immediate thoughts? Attorney Taylor?
Yes, I'm going to combine a couple here.
Sure.
The first one is that it would be not contrary to the public interest, and I think that we've heard that there is support for this type of facility, and we certainly don't have any evidence that it's against the public interest. To that end, I'm going to skip right to number 5 and suggest that we consider this under 5B, because basically I think there's been a showing that there is no other reasonable type of use for an industrial building, smack dab in the middle of a medium-density neighborhood. I know when I have in the past had to deal with other or advise other zoning boards outside of Keene, I always use the example of, well, if you've got a new use, you're not going to put an industrial building in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Well, here we've got exactly the opposite situation, where you have an industrial-style building that has had a residential neighborhood develop around it.
That's about right. Mike?
I completely agree with everything Attorney Taylor just said, and I would add that one of my thoughts is regarding number 2, the variance and its conformity with the spirit of the ordinance. I think that, being a residential zone, the prior use being at least partly warehouse was pretty far outside the spirit of the ordinance, and that the new use that we are considering is one that, while still technically outside the ordinance, is on a trajectory towards more proximity and conformity with the ordinance. And, gyms are often a feature of an apartment building or a hotel or something like that. They're things that people like to be near where they are and where they live. So I think that number 2 is also satisfied.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's basically the reason why I suggest we consider it under 5B, because then the spirit of the ordinance isn't as much of a factor.
All right, well, from what I've heard, from the public comment especially, granting this variance would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, and it also would seem to, if the people who live there and their observations are correct, and I have no doubt that they are, it would also seem to enhance public safety, or at least give public safety a better shot. It certainly wouldn't, the use itself would not threaten public health, safety, or welfare, so I guess that's the bottom line. The fact that it improves it or could improve it is a plus. And I agree with Attorney Taylor that we should proceed on the second part of the 5th criterion in this case, for the reasons you stated. I don't see any diminution in property values either, so. And the gain to the public is sort of the same. There's a gain to the public and a gain to the landowner, which is a nice mixture under substantial justice. And we heard the neighbors and what a kind of a positive influence and impact this use will have, and it has had. So I think that criterion is satisfied as well. So, anybody else have any other comments?
I do, I live on Valley Street, I'm just outside of the abutters list, and I've been there for 23 years, so when it was Z.B.A, it looked like it was really out of place. Seeing guys with insulation trucks going back and forth. And it is a problematic building when you have a big warehouse area like that and not much else you can do and everything else is chopped up. The 3 years that CrossFit has been there, you see people, they might be running down the sidewalk, on some sort of timed thing, going back and forth as a part of their workout. Does not seem to be any sort of impact with traffic. Certainly, it's a positive, people are doing positive things in relationship to it. So just my observations of it are, I don't see how granting this would have a negative impact on any of these criteria.
And there's certainly enough parking. We talked about that before, so. Okay. Now, do you want to, any further deliberation necessary, or do you want to proceed? Then we should entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve Z.B.A 23-26, which is 36 Carpenter Street.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by
Mike Welch.
Mr. Clough, second by Mr. Welsh. And we'll go through the 5 criteria. Number 1, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those in favor? It's unanimous. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. Unanimous. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. Unanimous. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. Unanimous. Now, we'll go to B. We seem to agree that the criteria in subparagraph A would not be established, but a necessary hardship will be deemed to exist if and only if, owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, the property cannot be reasonably used in strict conformance with the ordinance, and a variance is therefore necessary to enable a reasonable use. We've had some discussion about that. All those in favor of that criterion? It's unanimous. And on the main motion, all those in favor of approving 2326, raise your hand. It's unanimous. The variance is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the last one is our favorite kind of a case. It's a sign case. So, I'll call up Z.B.A 2327. The petitioner, Catherine Wilbarger of Cheshire Medical Center, represented by Michael Vickers of Design Communications, Avon, Mass., requests a variance for property located at 62 Maple Avenue, tax map 227-006-000, which is in the Industrial Park District. The petitioner requests a directional sign exceeding the allowable size of 4 square feet per Article 10.2 of the zoning regulations. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. My name is Jason Bridges with Design. I'm sorry.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Let me have Michael Hagan speak to that first.
Apologies.
He's got to give us the background.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 62 Maple Ave, zoned industrial park, built in 1957. It's 142,790 square feet, according to the records. It did receive a variance or a special exception in 2021, in April 2021. For institutional use, it was approved 5-0. It has had a long history of being in office use, a couple different insurance companies, and was recently changed over for the hospital use.
All set? Any questions about that history? None, okay, good. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Jason Bridges. Mr. Vickers is unfortunately out of town. I am from Design Communications on behalf of Cheshire Medical Center. This request, as you had mentioned, is to allow 2 directional signs that are currently larger than what is allowed by code. Maximum allowed is square footage of 4 square feet, and we're requesting a variance to allow 2 signs that are 17.0 square feet each. These signs are directional and not for commercial advertising purposes. Cheshire Medical Center acquired this property recently, and in the future will occupy the entire building. Renovation, however, is being done in phases, and the first phase renovates approximately 10% of the building, which is in the very, very back of the building, not visible by the street, facing the northwest facade. The new entrance is completely invisible from the street and from the vehicular entrance point, which is located on Maple Ave. As the healthcare facility, patients are often arriving to this location under duress, and a lot of elderly population is also visiting, and a certain percentage of patients are vision compromised. Efficiently directing them to the back of the building is critical for a medical facility. Our proposed signs feature directional messages at 4 3/8 letter height. According to Universal Design Guidelines, the maximum legibility of the size of a letter is from 145 feet. It's critical that this first sign is legible as soon as you enter the main entrance at the southeast facade, adjacent to the entry point. If you mistakenly turn left and park there, there's many parking spaces all over the immediate entrance of the facility. Those doors are locked, and it can be confusing as, again, the only entrance is in the far back of the building. The first directional is located about 140 feet from that Maple Ave entrance. The second directional, to take people then left around to the back of the building, is about 200 feet past that first. The entrance is still not visible at that point and does not become invisible until you actually make that left turn to the back facade. The maximum size letter available on a 4 square foot sign is approximately 1 inch, which is only readable from about 30 feet back, which doesn't work for the purpose of wayfinding or directional. For the criteria, granting this variance would not be contrary to the public interest because granting this variance is in the best interest of the public for reasons expressed in Section 3. Additionally, the directionals are not visible from the public right of way or from the street, or the traveling public is not affected as there is no visible sight lines that will be affected. These signs are not illuminated, and they are not commercial advertising, simply critical functional directional use. If the variance was granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because these signs are enlarged only as much to properly function from the distance that they would be read from, and are not, again, visible from the street. These are not factors in our request, as a healthcare facility is not a competitive commercial business entity in definition. It is a public service entity. Standard business advertising rules we don't feel would apply for this wayfinding. Granting the variance would do substantial justice because, as stated in Section 3, patients can easily find their way to the main point of entry under what could be duressful situations or stressful situations. If the variance was granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished because these signs, again, though are larger than code allows, they're not overbearing by any sense of the word. The size of the facility and the lot in comparison to the size facility of the lot. There's a substantial buffer zone between the signs and the nearest residential neighborhoods, so you would not be able to see this from the abutting properties. Unnecessary hardship, per section 3 again, the entrance is now at the far back of the building, and these signs are critical functional tools to direct traffic to that entrance. As per answer 4.2, the public purpose of the ordinance would not be affected.
Anybody have any questions? Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, I have one question, if I'm understanding your picture, as opposed to the drawings correctly. Where you say that directional 1, I'm quite familiar with that property, and I think that is visible from the street.
Visible but not obstructing of wayfinding or of vehicular travel coming
Oh,
down
okay,
Maple Street.
because you
It's
said
set
it
back-
wasn't visible from the street.
Apologies. It would be visible, it's 140 feet set back, but it's not obstructing at all within vehicular driving coming along Maple Street.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. You said the main entrance is going to be in the back?
Correct.
Is there a reason the design is made that way? Is there something about the building that requires you to put it back there?
Well, the building is being renovated in phases,
Yes.
and this was the first phase to be completed, so there's still two lot, or units, if you will, that are under construction that will be completed at a later date, but currently the only operating unit would be in the very far back, which is completely invisible again from the entrance point. And there's multiple entrance points or multiple entrance ways to go as you pull into the property. That can be confusing.
And those two signs will direct you to this place you need to park or wherever to get into that door, to that back entrance door?
Correct, so there's a straight arrow directing you to the back. Again, there's multiple parking area
Right.
within that point of travel, so it can be quite confusing, and someone could easily just go into an open spot. And then the second would take you left around to the back of the building where the main entrance is.
I'm
and
pretty sure
currently
you can take a
operating.
hiking trip and one into that parking lot to get to your building.
It's quite a large acreage, yes.
Yes, okay. Will the entire building be renovated and used by the hospital, by the clinic?
It will be, sir.
And what's the time frame for that?
Sorry. Hi, Kevin Forrest. I'm the Vice President of Facilities and Support Services at Cheshire Medical.
How do you do?
Good, thank you. Good evening. So we will own and occupy all of the building. Right now, we're looking at phases. We just opened the family residency and community care center October 9th. There's no other current construction going on in the building right now. But over the next several years, we intend to occupy the rest of the building.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? No more? No? All right, if you guys are all set, I'll open it up to the public. Is there anybody here tonight opposed to this application? Seeing nobody, is there anybody else here in support of this application? Seeing nobody else, I guess we'll close the public hearing and begin our deliberations. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
We'll get right to it. If nobody wants to start, I will. The public interest here, as the gentleman mentioned, is pretty significant, and, you know, when you're going to the hospital or the doctors, you may not be in the best state of mind, and you do want to be able to be told where to go quickly and efficiently. So I think the idea there in the public interest is satisfied. I also think there's nothing in this application that would alter the essential character of the neighborhood or create a public health issue or safety issue. In fact, it would do the opposite, like the last one seemed to have done. On the substantial justice prong, I would see that there's no harm to the public. There's a gain to the public by being properly directed in a very large property. I think the building is 142,000, almost 143,000 square feet. And I don't remember the acreage size, but it's pretty significant out there. And it's a huge parking lot. So being told where to, what direction to go to park your car is a big help. The part that I'm not at all clear on is what special conditions exist on this property that distinguish it from others in the area. Its size is certainly one thing, which creates the need for directionals. So I would say that that's one special condition. And I don't know, anybody else want to chime in on that?
If I'm thinking about it, I think, the size of the pavement is really extraordinary. I
Yep.
actually, it's where I taught my kids to drive.
Me
'cause there's
too.
so many- I think the town does. But it's just a big paved lot, and, it's hard to get direction from just massive pavement. And so really significant signage, I think, is necessary in this instance. And that might be a special condition.
Attorney Taylor?
Yeah, and I taught my kids how to drive there, too.
That was my idea.
I think it's not just the size of the parking lot, but as Attorney Hoppick said, it's the size of the building itself. It's really hard if you don't know where you're going to know where you're going, pure and simple. And especially if the entrance, at least for the moment, is in the rear of the building, I think you could go around in circles pretty easily. And, patients don't always have a lot of time to find their way.
Okay, yep, I agree with that too. Any further comments or anything of that nature?
I guess I would add that because of the size of the lots, you need signs that are that big. Because it's either that or you would be putting 15 signs there saying, keep going, not there yet, now
You're
take a
past the
left.
turnaround.
Right, right. So I suspect it's also a minimum number of signs to get the information across.
Well, they're only asking for 2, so. All right. That's a good observation. Any other comments? Anybody want to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes, Mike?
we try and write down when you make comments on each category. I didn't hear anything for the spirit or for the surrounding
Oh, I thought
properties. I think you jumped from 1 to
Oh.
3 to 5.
I'll fix that right now. Spirit of the ordinance. I don't see anything about this application that would have any impact on the, or alter the immediate neighborhood. And I don't see anything that would impact or adversely affect public health, safety, or welfare. In fact, I think it would have the opposite effect. It would enhance it by directing people who need medical attention to the right place. And I don't think, given the way the signs were described in terms of, it's not a commercial sign, it's not gonna be lit up at night, you're not gonna really see it from the road, it's not gonna impede traffic, it's not gonna distract. So, all those things put together don't affect safety, and they would not diminish property values. I think that's the one you might be missing. Yes, yes, Attorney Taylor.
And I guess I would just add to that, on the impact on the neighborhood, is, while there are residential houses across the street, there is one residential house right next door However, there is a significant hedge that would block, there's not going to be any lighted signs added. So I think they're pretty well insulated from the impact of these signs.
I think we're ready to vote on this application. Somebody would like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve ZBA 232762 Maple Ave directional signage.
Okay. Mr. Clough seconded it. Mr. Welsh made the motion. Now, we'll go through the 5 criteria. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those in favor? It's unanimous. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. Again, unanimous. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. Unanimous. Owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from others in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and its specific application of that provision to this property. That's unanimous as well. And on the main motion. Oh, yeah, I always forget that one. And the proposed use is a reasonable one. That's unanimous. On the main motion for approving ZBA 2327, all those in favor? That's again unanimous. That variance is approved. Good luck, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We don't have any new business, do we?
We do not, Mr. Chair.
That's good news.
Very good news.
No communications. I think we can be stood adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.